So we just had night one of the WWE Draft, and it was okay. It was alright. What did you guys think? For me, it kind of didn't have that spark, that thing I was looking for when it comes to the draft. I kind of like how certain things are done in the past. I don't know. I'm an old school guy. I remember the days when you'd have the likes of Batista and John Cena as your champions, and then they would get drafted to opposite brands and really shake things up. This round one, anyways, of the draft that happened on Smackdown really didn't have a ton of surprises. Majority of people stayed on the same brand. I saw that there were some highlights of some people getting called up, and someone like Carmelo Hayes getting a prominent spot in the draft in round one, and going up against Cody Rhodes and having a banger of a match. That's really cool. There's some wins, but I think there's also some stuff that I was like, this is a little underwhelming. I think one of the things that did it for me overall was that champions were not allowed to be drafted. They kept it this year where you were gonna have all the WWE champions on one brand, all of the world champions on the other brand on Raw, and they were excluded. That to me stopped WWE from feeling like it really shook things up when it came to the draft. It would have been really cool if like world champion Becky Lynch drafted to SmackDown, Seth Rollins drafted to SmackDown, if you had Damian Priest over on SmackDown, to give things a little bit more of a shake up and feel different. I understand that you could just move all the other pieces around, like all of the other roster to fit the storylines. I just feel like that was one of the elements of the draft that used to make it feel really unpredictable and a lot of fun. You wouldn't know where John Cena was going to land. You would assume Batista would stay on Raw, and then he got moved over to SmackDown. And then the vast majority of the picks last night didn't move. People didn't go to NXT like I had kind of hoped they would, just to be able to freshen things up. But let's go through all of the draft picks, and let's go through each round and see how they did. So in round one, you had Bianca Belair as the first overall draft pick, and Bianca is staying on SmackDown. Kind of thought that Bianca should have gone over to Monday Night Raw. I wonder what she's going to do now. We'll have to see when Raw shakes out with the rest of the draft to see kind of who could she line up with in terms of feuds. Jey Uso stayed on Monday Night Raw. This could play into Jimmy Uso maybe after injury coming and showing up on Monday Night Raw. And we're going to talk about Roman Reigns as well in the Bloodline, because I don't know. SmackDown got Carmelo Hayes. This was huge. In the first round, you got Carmelo Hayes. You had Triple H out there, you had Cody Rhodes, and Carmelo Hayes got that spotlight. That to me shows WWE is like, this is one of the guys that we are going to feature on SmackDown every single week. He's going to be a central focus. He's going to be a cornerstone, because it set up Carmelo Hayes in a big way to show that he is a main event guy. And they had a pretty good match at the end of SmackDown going against Cody. And for me personally, it was nice to see Cody Rhodes actually have a match on TV. I've been missing that, and he's coming up to Backlash, so kudos to Cody Rhodes, because he's defending the title. The one thing I was getting a little bit worried about is that Cody's coming out every single week just doing his promos and then going for the one match at the PLE. Great to see that they featured and showcased Carmelo Hayes this way. It really does put him over. No, I don't think it buries Carmelo in any way that he lost to the champion. You gotta get him on main roster, and you're putting him up against the WWE Undisputed Champion. And they finish off the round one with Seth Rollins staying on Monday Night Raw, which makes sense. Becky's on Raw, and he's Seth freaking Rollins. He's Monday Night Rollins, all of that stuff. And I guess it would make sense that if, let's see how Raw plays out, but you get the likes of Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, you have Damian Priest, presumably all staying on Monday Night Raw. Okay, that's gonna kind of keep the playing field exactly the same, and this is one of the issues I have, but we'll see how things shake out. Round two of the draft, we got Randy Orton staying on SmackDown. Now, since Cody is staying on SmackDown, this is okay with me, because now I can see Randy versus Cody at some point. That's a match that I'm dying to see, the feud. I want 3-4 months of this entire epic story of the two of them going through their entire history. Be a lot of fun. Braun Breaker got drafted over to Monday Night Raw, so an actual move here. So not everyone was just staying put. Braun Breaker going to Raw. They have just introduced Braun Breaker with SmackDown, just going through and doing some squash matches, nothing major. And now over to Raw. This is where I want to see what he can do. If you bring Braun in over to Monday Night Raw as a heel, get him a couple of, squash matches, some lower end wins, build him up, and then get him into like the Intercontinental title division and see what he could do. Braun is a strong enough force, you could put him into the world title contention, have him mixing it up. Maybe he's somebody that's going to be in Money in the Bank, but Braun Breaker I have a lot of high hopes for. and hopefully you can give him some good big matches. And again, get him in the mid-card scene. It'd probably work out. The next one they added in, SmackDown got Nia Jax. This was one of my predictions. I'm glad it came true. Nia needed to move brands. I felt like she did everything she could on Monday Night Raw. She has a story with Rhea Ripley. She's fought Becky Lynch, and she kind of dominated through the women's division of what was currently on Monday Night Raw. I'm glad she's going to SmackDown. It freshens things up. I think specifically it gives a really good enemy for Bayley when she's defending her title. Bayley's got this thing with Tiffany Stratton. She's also got the thing with Naomi going on at Backlash, that triple threat match. That's great, but I think you can get Nia over there and start building up her as a world beater, as this dominant force in the women's division and a real threat to Bayley, because I think she's going to need that. And they finish off round 2. Liv Morgan stays on Monday Night Raw. This makes sense. You're gonna have probably Liv in this new revenge character going as a heel, going up against Becky because she lost in the Battle Royal, so you can do that match and get that story done. And then when Rhea inevitably comes back, and it might be a couple of months, but then you have the baked in story. If Rhea gets drafted to Raw, then you're gonna be able to do that and have the payoff there. So it does make sense to keep Liv on Raw, just not a lot of shakeups and a lot of movement here. Round 3 in the draft, LA Knight, this is disappointing. This is disappointing for Matt. LA Knight stays on SmackDown. I didn't want LA Knight on SmackDown. I wanted LA Knight to move over to Raw. I hope they have big plans for him. There is a saving grace with all of this. I did want LA Knight on Raw. I felt like he did everything on SmackDown. I felt like he was spinning his wheels a little bit. That he's had the feud with AJ, it's been fun, but I was ready to see if they would move him to Raw and get him into the world title scene. Keeping him on SmackDown though, the good thing is, one, yeah, you could keep the feud with AJ and LA Knight going, because we know later on, AJ Styles also drafted to SmackDown, staying there. You could keep that story going. You can get LA Knight versus Cody Rhodes at some point, but LA Knight's not going to win that belt. I think it actually sets up eventually LA Knight versus Logan Paul US title at SummerSlam. We know the champions didn't move, but I think SummerSlam is a great payoff to give LA Knight the belt. Let him be the US champion. Let's see what he can do with that. So that's kind of the saving grace for me with this. And then we have Ricochet. He stays on Monday Night Raw. Ricochet I kind of thought should have either stayed on Raw. I know he's got Samantha over there, so that makes sense. But he could have gone to NXT and beefed up NXT a lot more. Ricochet on Raw, he's doing great stuff. So maybe Ricochet's going to get a bit of a lift and go to the Intercontinental division. SmackDown got, this is where it gets interesting. SmackDown got the Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Paul Heyman. Earlier in SmackDown though, Paul Heyman was doing the backstage thing and said that Roman Reigns is withdrawing himself from the draft. So Roman Reigns can't be drafted because he said so. So in the storyline of WWE, in the world of WWE, this is kind of like, couldn't everybody exempt themselves from the draft? Like, I know it's fantasy, it's booking, like I get it, I do get it, but I'm like, in the logic of it, you're just saying that Roman Reigns is such a big star, he can pull himself out of the draft. Okay, kind of like Brock, right? But couldn't Jey Uso then turn around and be like, I don't want to be drafted, I'm going to be a free agent and I'll be on every brand I want to be on? Like, I don't know. I get that they're trying to push the storyline. Having Roman not drafted, yes, it will help with the stories that they want to tell later on. Like Paul Heyman even said in the promo, Roman Reigns is not around. He's not going to be around for a while. So if Roman's not going to be around for a while, I understand not drafting him to like SmackDown. I hope that if you just keep Roman as almost a free agent, you kind of do like what Brock did and just float and go between Raw and SmackDown where it makes sense, and then he's basically above brand. It'll help with their storylines when they inevitably want to do something where it's old bloodline versus new bloodline, and they want to do that story. That's why I predict Jimmy and Jay end up on Raw. Roman could show up on Raw, rally with them, and go up against New Bloodline at like Survivor Series. And you could have that face off if you want to do that. It'll make for interesting TV when Roman does show up at some point, but they drafted the Bloodline in the 3rd round. The biggest like faction, biggest story that they had wasn't round 1. So I think this also can help play into the story of Solo being like whatever, pseudo leader for the Bloodline, and he went all the way down to the 3rd round of draft picks. He wasn't in the 1st round. And Roman Reigns is out, so he didn't get drafted. So I think it will help play into the story of the Bloodline descending and Solo and Tama Tonga wanting to like reclaim their presence at the top. And then Monday Night Raw got Sheamus. Sheamus has come back. He's been on Raw. I think it's fine. He was on SmackDown forever. Makes total sense. Sheamus goes to Raw. Get this feud going with Drew McIntyre again. I'm having fun with that. So I assume Drew is going to stay on Monday Night Raw as well. Sheamus can do a lot of fun stuff. And again, it allows Sheamus to get into the Intercontinental title scene. So possibly this year, Sheamus could finally get the IC title, the title he's never gotten before. So I think it could set up a really cool story for Sheamus. Round 4, as we mentioned earlier, AJ Styles, drafted, AJ stays on SmackDown. Cool. I have no problems with that. I just want to see what they're going to do with heel AJ. We'll go through the supplemental draft as well. I don't know what stories they're going to tell with AJ beyond Backlash and Cody. Maybe he still mixes it up in that storyline. And then are you going to go back to LA Knight? Are you going to go with Randy Orton, for example? I really want to know what they're going to do with AJ, because him as a heel, it works for me. I really like what he's doing, but I got to see more of what they're going to do with the story. And Raw got Alpha Academy. So again, not a move. Alpha Academy, all of them stay. Don't really like this. I was hoping Chad Gable would break from Alpha Academy and go to SmackDown. I think it's a nicer fit. I think him with the Creed brothers, they could do a new Team Gable like Team Angle was. Maybe they are going to do that if the Creed brothers get drafted to Raw. Then you could tell that whole story. I just thought, move them all to SmackDown. Just do something else. Just do. That's where the shakeups, I'm like, that's a little underwhelming. Not a lot of shakeups. You've seen Chad Gable and you've seen the rest of Alpha Academy on Raw every single week. Kind of wanted something different. But hopefully if Creed brothers get drafted, then you get the inner turmoil stuff. Gable goes more heel. It could be fun. SmackDown got Andrade. Andrade's been flipping back and forth between brands. So I just want to see what stories they can do with Andrade. Not just put him into these tag teams. Yeah, you got to move Andrade beyond LWO and whatever this is, back and forth. Andrade's fantastic. Like, US champion, let's go. Maybe even just heal him up a lot and have him go and fight Cody. Andrade versus Cody would be a banger. And then a great surprise, Kiana James got drafted from NXT to Raw. Excited, young blood in there, somebody fresh, somebody new that you're going to bring up. I think this is a great pick. I think it's surprising too. We kind of expected Carmelo Hayes to go, but glad to see that they're going to take younger talent from NXT and say, you know what, go up to main roster, let's see what we can do. They could put Kiana James into some faction or let her go solo, but it'll help freshen the women's division over there. And then they did the supplemental draft, the announcements on social for who else got drafted. We got your names right here. So the OC drafted to SmackDown. So that's going to be Michin Mia Yim. And we've got the OC themselves, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson. They're all there staying on SmackDown. Fine. They're going to, I guess, be heels with AJ, or they're just not. I kind of want to see them in NXT. Go for tag titles, do that, but I guess it's fine they're on SmackDown. SmackDown got Baron Corbin, so Corbin went from being main roster down to NXT. Was doing some fun work. The Wolf Dogs, whatever, Dog Wolves they were doing there with Baron Corbin. That was fun. I think that if Baron can kind of keep some good momentum with his character, SmackDown could be some fun matches. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I worry that he just gets turned into regular Corbin, but it's Triple H era. They might actually flesh out these characters and give them more to do. Cedric Alexander and Ashante the Adonis, SmackDown. Great to see. They can get into the tag team division. They're great workers, so I think them versus A-Town Down Under, that's going to be fun. Now they got the split tag titles, I think can do a lot for a lot of that mid-card area, that mid-card scene, specifically for the tag team division. I could see a lot of stuff happening there. I think that's a good win. Then Raw got Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. They stay on Monday Night Raw. No changes there. I thought Shayna should maybe go to NXT, become women's champion over there. If they keep them on Raw together, are they going to be a tag team? We'll have to see. Then we got Alba Fire Isla Dawn drafted over to Monday Night Raw. I like this, but we haven't seen them on TV, so hopefully this means they will do something with them. And hopefully they go to Matt's whole fantasy booking of adding them to this Uncle Howdy team, and they go into that faction, because that's what I want to see them do. And then lastly, Ivar staying on Monday Night Raw. No changes there, announced on social media. And Ivar's been doing great work. I've actually enjoyed what he did. He's showing up in NXT, and I'd like them to do a little bit more of that. What did you think of the draft? For me, it's a little underwhelming, because as we went through all the names, not a lot of changes. Carmelo got called up. Kiana James is up. That's cool. Minor shuffles, nothing major. And I think one of the hindering aspects is that champions don't change. I think that's one of the intriguing things when you do switch it up, but I understand from WWE's perspective why they keep them and say they're exempt from the draft. The overall feel, I will say, for the draft, how WWE produced this, I liked it. They gave it much more of a sports feel. It felt fresh. So while I have my critiques for how it kind of all played out, the overall presentation, the way they delivered it, I liked it. They did the whole 2 rooms, the different brands in there. You had the whole NXT group as well, via satellite showing up there, getting interviewed. I liked how they presented it. Triple H was out there. They had a few people like the Dudley Boys doing some draft picks. They had Hall of Famers out. it felt good, and it had that sports feel for the whole thing. We got to see what's going to happen on Raw. What were your thoughts on the draft? Night 1. We'll be back with you guys for Night 2 when we got Monday Night Raw. Hopefully the shakeups are pretty entertaining. We'll see. Have a great day. See ya.